23 verse 4. Before we read that text, obviously you heard from my testimony that I'm been in tech for a while. And if you're into computer hardware, you will know that every time you want to go buy a computer, one of the things that you look at is what they call processing power. Yeah, the CPU, anyone. Yeah, so the CPU, the central processing unit. So if you want to buy a computer, you're thinking, does this computer have a high processing power? Is this computer able to handle the load, the pressure that I put on it? The problem is that it's not just computers that need high processing power. The real issue is that you and I, if we're going to make it in this world, it is not going to be what happens to you and I that will determine how far we go, but our ability to process what happens to us. Let me say that again. You see, your ability to be successful in life won't depend on what happens to you. It will depend more on your ability to process what happens to you. So I want to preach a sermon this evening, a sermon I've entitled Processing Power. Turn to somebody and say processing power. Processing power from Psalm chapter 23 verse 4. Psalms 23 verse 4. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Let's pray tonight. Heavenly Father, I pray this evening that your word will not just inform us, but that your word will transform us. That we will walk away from here totally different from how we came. In Jesus' name, and everyone here said. So I want to begin by talking about the premium lesson that I've learned. I'm more than 50 years old. I've seen quite a lot of stuff. I've been through a lot of things. Now, if you ask me and say, Pastor Emmanuel, what would be one of the biggest lessons you've learned in life? I'll tell you instantly that it's not what happens to you that determines how far you go, but how you deal with what happens to you. Let me say that again. It's not what happens to you that determines whether you're going to be successful or not. What determines how far you go in life is your ability to process the events of your life. This is the difference between successful people and people who are not successful. This is the difference between people who make it and people who don't make it. The difference is in their ability to process the events that happen in their life. I'll give you an example. How many people in Africa we we have a lot of clay? Anybody know what clay is? Clay, right? And then we eat with butter. We know what butter is. Now I want you to take clay and butter and put them under the sun. Put clay under the sun, put butter under the sun, same sun, right? One melts, one gets harder. Same sun. The sun melts the butter, but hardens the clay. So it's not going to be what happens to you that determine where you get to in life. It's how you process what happens to you. That's going to be the big difference in your life, right? So if you ask me, Pastor, you've been around for 50 more years. What is your biggest lesson? I'll tell you. If my son asks me that question, I'll say, son, it's not about what happens to you, but it's about how you process, how you deal with what happens to you. And this is something that I want you to take home tonight, that your biggest challenge is processing. Life will throw stuff at you. Let me say that again. Life will throw stuff. This is the reason why two people will go through the same thing. One emerges successful, and the other person doesn't even emerge from it. You're thinking, didn't you both go through the same thing? Oh no, it's not what happens to you, but how you deal with what happens to you. I'll give you a few examples in the Bible before we look at a few things. Look at the two thieves on the cross. We just finished the Easter play, right? Now, how many people remember the two thieves on the cross? Jesus was in the middle. They were both criminals, right? In a bad situation. How is it that one ends up in paradise? How many people remember the story? The two thieves on the cross. One ends up in paradise, and the other one ends up, we don't even know where he ends up. two criminals in the same pain, hanging on the same cross, going through the same very painful situation. One person ends up in a good place. The other person ends up in a bad place. Same circumstances, but the difference is how they processed it. So let me say that again. The biggest issue in your life is not what happens to you, but how you deal with what happens to you. The thief on one side of Jesus ended up in paradise. The other thief ended up somewhere, who knows, and they were both criminals. They were both criminals. One person came on the cross and was still bitter, was still full of anger, was still full of bitterness. The other person comes to the cross and says, Jesus, you know what? I'm a sinner. All right? Same two men under the same conditions. One ends up in a good place. The other one ends up in a bad place, because it's not what happens to you in life, but how you process what happens to you. What about Peter and Judas? You know, everywhere you go in the world today, you're going to see a cathedral built for St. Peter. If you go to Russia, there's a St. Peter's Cathedral. You go to the Vatican, there's St. Peter's Cathedral. You go to Jamaica, there's always one Catholic church built in honor of St. Peter. Have you ever seen anything built in honor of Judas? No. But both of them were both in trouble. Both of them were in trouble. I mean, Peter denied Jesus. That's bad. Judas betrayed Jesus. That's bad too, right? How come Peter comes through that bad situation and becomes the leader of the church, and Judas hangs himself on a tree? I mean, they were all both in a bad place. Am I talking to someone here tonight? They're all both in a bad place. One person processes the bad situation better and emerges to a better place. Another person couldn't process the bad situation. Judas goes off, takes a rope, puts a rope on his neck, hangs himself. Peter cries, repents, comes through the process, and becomes St. Peter. Two men, same bad situation. One ends up in a good place. The other one ends up in a bad place, because it's not what happens to you, but how you process what happens to you. Am I talking to someone here tonight? It's not, oh, Pastor, you don't know what? No. For every excuse you make about the bad thing that's happened to you, I will bring you 100 people who went through the same bad stuff and made it. For every excuse you make about, oh, Pastor, you know, my parents were this, or my husband was this, or my wife was this, or I was born in a poor country. Let me tell you, for every excuse you make about why your life is in a mess, I could bring 1,000 people who went through the same thing you're complaining about, and who were able to get to a good place because they were able to process life's circumstances. So remember, as I said, it's not what happens to you, but how you deal with what happens to you. What about Ruth and Orpah? You know the story, right? Both lost their husbands. Naomi, right? Naomi, Orpah and Ruth were Naomi's daughter-in-laws. Orpah and Ruth both lost their husbands. Today we don't hear about Orpah. She disappeared. But there's no year you're not going to hear somebody preach a sermon on Ruth. Well, how is it? How is it that two women who were in the same bad situation, one emerges, marries a Boaz, and through her lineage, King David comes, and through King David, who came? Jesus. And then the other person, we don't hear about her anymore. You know why? Because it's not what happens to you. It's not what happens to you, but how you deal with what happens to you. Am I talking to someone? You know, stop the excuses. Stop saying, oh, you don't know what's happened to me. Because for every time you say, oh, Pastor, this happened to me, I can find 1,000 people who went through the same thing you're complaining about, but who kind of processed it better? Who kind of dealt with it better? Who kind of went through it and didn't get bitter? Can I say something to someone here? You see, what you're going through today wasn't designed to make you bitter. It was actually designed to make you better. Oh, am I talking to the right people here? You see, oh, Pastor, I'm in a bad place. Listen. God allowed you in that situation not so you could get bitter, but just so you could get better. And if you process it well, if you process that situation well, you get better. If you process it well, you come through it. The problem is that if you don't process it well, that could just be the end of you. So let's go further and look at some possibilities. You see, for some people, you either have a stepping stone or a tombstone. Let me say it again. I could chuck a stone at Shiloh. It is for Shiloh to decide whether the stone I threw at you is going to be a stepping stone or is going to be a tombstone. Who knows what I mean by a tombstone? Anyone here? The choice is yours. People can throw stones at you. You can't control that. But what you do with the stone is entirely up to you. So if I chuck a stone to Brunel, it's for Brunel to say, well, this is not going to be my tombstone. This is going to be a what? A stepping stone. That choice is yours to make. Oh, don't say, Pastor, oh, they threw some stones at me. I'll show you people that they threw stones at, but who turned the tombstone into a stepping stone. And that's why I keep telling you that life will throw stuff at you. What you do with what life throws at you is entirely up to you. So it's not what happens to you, but it's how you process what happens to you. What about, for you, would it be a dead end or a bypass? When you come to a point in life where it looks like you can't move forward, do you say, well, this is the end, or do you say this is a bypass? You see, for some people, they come to that point, they say, listen, it's over, it's finished. I'm going to commit suicide. For other people, what you will call a dead end, they'll call a bypass. They'll say, listen, this is not the end for me. I'm talking to someone here prophetically. It's not the end for you. Am I speaking to someone here? I'm speaking prophetically now to someone here. I know you're in a bad place and you're thinking, oh God, I'm in a bad place. Listen, what you are calling a dead end, God is calling a bypass. What you're calling a tombstone, God is saying, I've given you the grace to turn that tombstone into a stepping stone. Am I talking to someone here tonight? It's entirely up to you what you do with what life throws at you. What life throws at you. So a dead end can become a bypass if you process it properly. A stepping stone, a tombstone can become a stepping stone if you process it properly. Or you could say, Pastor, this situation is making me bitter. And I could feel the Spirit of God say, well, this situation wasn't designed to make you bitter. It was designed to make you better. Right? Don't be bitter. Use that situation and be better. Be better in that marriage. Be better in that workplace. Be better in that new opportunity. Do you know that there are things I'm good at today? Let me even share this. Let me share this testimony. The job I testified about. Can I tell you how I got it? Let me tell you how I got it. So I went for an interview. A company called Inizio. Inizio is an AI company. So they call me for an interview. Yeah? You know them? Inizio is an AI company. So Inizio calls me for an interview. So I take their call. They say, so I do the first interview, and I get through. I'm quite good at what I do when I'm focused. So I do their first interview, no problems. I then travel to Nigeria on holiday, do their second interview, no problems. I come back and they say, oh, you've done well in the 2 interviews. We want you to do these days in tech. They'll give you a project. They'll give you one of your interviews in tech now will be a technical interview. So they give me a technical interview. They say, go build us a RAG application. There's something called RAG application. A RAG, that's what it's called. So they say, go build us a RAG application. That's your 3rd interview. This is the specification, not a problem. So I go off. I build this RAG application and it works. So I come for my 3rd interview. I'm thinking, I've got this job. I've got this job. So, it's on Zoom. I've got a panel. I demonstrate what my application is doing. And I come off that interview. I'm thinking, this job is mine. I've got this job in the back. They said, we'll get back to you shortly. First day, they didn't get back to me. Second day, they didn't get back to me. Third day, they didn't get back to me. I'm thinking, what is going on? I then contacted them. And then they now wrote me the usual letter. On this occasion, you've not been successful. I was broken. I fell. I was getting bitter. I was getting bitter. Now, what happened? A friend of mine that I went to school with called me. Say, oh, Emmanuel, what's going on? I say, yeah, I'm not very happy. He said, what happened? I said, I just went for an interview, and they asked me to build a RAG application. So RAG application is like your Gemini. Your Gemini, or it's an AI tool. And I said, I built it, and they still didn't give me the job. And you know what my friend said? He said, you don't have to, you could build RAG. I said, I could build RAG. He takes my RAG application that failed in this company, and then speaks to this company in Austria about it. The company in Austria said, we want to see you. I go over there, they see me, and then they give me the job. Now, how did I get the job? What was meant to make me bitter actually made me better. So I don't know who you are here tonight. And I get prophetic this way. I don't know who you are here tonight. Maybe you're in a situation where you're getting bitter. God says to tell you that circumstance was not designed to make you bitter. That circumstance was designed to make you better. Am I talking to someone here tonight? That's what God says to tell you. It is designed to make you better, not bitter. So, Pastor Emmanuel, okay, I've heard you, no problems. What are the things that can help us process life's problems? Pastor, how is it possible? Are there provisions? Are there things I can use when I'm going through stuff to make sure that I don't get bitter and I get better? Are there things that I can use to make sure that tombstones can become what? Can become what? Tombstones can become what? Stepping stones. Are there things, Pastor, that I could use to make sure that dead ends can become bypasses? Does God have any provisions to help me make sure tombstones don't become tombstones? I could turn tombstones into stepping stones. I could turn a bitter situation into something to make me better, or I can make sure that a bypass or a dead end becomes a bypass. Of course there are. So what has helped you, Pastor? I'm going to give you four things that can help you. 4 things that can help you. The first one is prayer. Somebody say prayer. Prayer. You're going through some tough times, tough situations. Take it to God in prayer. Right? Instead of getting bitter, go and pray. Talk to God about it. You're going through a divorce? Talk to God about it. You're not prayer. You see, you don't know what happens when you pray. Quite a lot happens when you pray. Listen, quite a lot happens. Have you read the Psalms? Anybody here, you've read the Psalms? Do you know that 90% of the Psalms weren't just songs? It was the prayers of David. Man's going through stuff. Instead of complaining, instead of getting bitter, he just went and prayed about it. So if you want to process life events better in such a way that you don't get bitter, then take those events and take them to God in prayer. When people hurt you, instead of just fighting back, go and complain to God. Learn to complain to. You see, our problem is that we're talking to everybody else who can't do nothing about the problem, but the one person who can actually change the problem, we don't talk to him. We're talking to everyone. Look at how they've helped me. Look at what they did to me. The one person that can change the situation, we don't even remember to talk to that person. So if you're asking for how to become a man or a woman who can process life's problems better, first one is prayer. The second one is perspective. Somebody say perspective. You see, how you see stuff is very important. How you see stuff. It's same stone, but this stone is not a tombstone. I'm going to turn this stone into but it's the same stone. The same stone that was thrown to kill you. It's a stone that you're saying, no, this is more like it's not a tombstone, it's a stepping stone. So perspective is important. That's why David said, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he said, I will fear no evil. Perspective. Have you been to a real valley? Oh, come to Africa, I'll show you some valley. I'll show you valleys where there's a cliff here and there's a cliff there. You're meant to be afraid in the valley, right? David said, no. I'm in the valley, but my perspective is not to fear. So how you see the problem is important. If you see the problem as your end, it may well be your end. But if you see the problem as opportunity, if you say, you know what, I know this is tough, but there might be some opportunities in this, then it won't be long before you start seeing opportunities in this. Am I talking to someone here tonight? So perspective is another way that can help you and I process life's events. So the first one is what? Prayer. The second one is perspective. Here's the third one, and that's my favorite. Patience. I want to speak to someone here prophetically. God says to tell you, give it time. Give it time. I know you're hurting, but give it time. Give it time. Our problem, can I tell somebody something here tonight? Even God himself needs time. God himself needs time. Have you ever noticed that even when prophets in the Bible pray for a woman to give birth, that the woman still has to carry the baby for 9 months? I would have thought that God would just be like, all right, sorry, Wendy, I use you as an example. I would have just thought God would be like, Wendy, you're going to have a baby. Boom, baby pop out. So even when God says Wendy's going to have a baby, Wendy still has to carry the baby for 9 months. Isn't it interesting that even when God sent Jesus to this world, Mary still had to carry Jesus for 9 months. So part of the things that can help you process life's events is to be patient. Turn to your neighbor and say, be patient. Give it time. Give it time. If you give half of your problem will be solved if you just stay patient and see what God does. Because even God, who is omnipotent, God with all his power, there are still circumstances where God will say, I need time. Are you listening to me? I need time. I'll give you one example in the Bible. So Joseph was in prison, right? Anybody remember the story of Joseph? So here's Joseph in prison. So Joseph, there's a baker. You know the story, the baker and the butler. The two of them have a dream. They come to Joseph. Joseph interprets the dream for the baker and the butler, and he got the dream interpretation right. The baker and the butler, they leave prison, and they did what? What did they do? They forgot Joseph, right? They forgot Joseph. And so Joseph is in prison. Can you imagine that? This is somebody who's working with God, and he's in prison, and he's thinking, I just interpreted the baker and the butler's dreams, and the butler's gone back to Pharaoh. Now, Joseph had to be in prison until God was ready to bring a dream to Pharaoh. So, if it feels like God has left you in a place, it's because God is working something out for you. You have to learn to wait. You have to learn to be patient, because even God himself needs time. God needs time. So here's Joseph in prison, and then maybe after 6-7 years, Pharaoh has a dream, and then the butler then said, I forgot. There was a guy I met in prison who could interpret dreams. And then Joseph comes, interprets the dream of Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh brought him out of prison. So all that time that Joseph was in prison, it wasn't for nothing. Joseph was in prison because God needed time. So are you going through stuff here tonight? God says to tell you, be patient. I need time. I need time. Like God can make a woman bring a child out, but that's not how he works. Can I tell you, God's not a magician. Oh, God does miracles, but he doesn't do magic. Do you know, if I do boom and Kerry brings a child, that's magic. Right? That's magic. But if a woman is barren, and I pray for the woman, and after 9 months the woman gives birth to a child, that's a miracle. That's not what? God's not a magician. Oh, am I talking to someone here tonight? God's not a magician. God is a miracle worker, but he's not a magician. A miracle worker, he needs time. So if you're in a bad situation, you're thinking, listen, just be patient. So the first thing is what? Prayer. The second one is what? Perspective. The third one is what? Patience. The last one is people. Get the right people around you. Let me tell you something. There are things you can't survive if you have the wrong people around you. Oftentimes, the difference between success and failure is having the right people around you. Folks who will encourage you. Folks who will pray for you. Folks who will pat you on the back and say, listen, you could do this. And sometimes folks who will look you in the eye and say, you're wrong. Are you getting what I'm saying? We need folks like that who will tell us the truth. Say, listen, bro, you're wrong. Right? People, if you're going to process life's difficult circumstances, make sure you have the right people around you. So let's summarize this. I said that it's not what happens to you, but how you process what happens to you. Life can chuck anything at you. It's entirely up to you to decide whether this is a tombstone or whether it's a what? A stepping stone. It's entirely up to you to decide whether this will make you bitter or whether it will make you better. It's entirely up to you to decide if, give me the third one. Let's see whether you're following my sermon. If this is a dead end or just a bypass. And let me tell you something. It's entirely up to you to decide whether this tragedy that you're going through right now is a full stop or just a colon. And God says to tell someone here, don't put a full stop where I only intended to put a comma. Or am I talking to the right people here? God says to tell you, don't go put do you understand what I mean by a full stop? Don't go put a period or a full stop where God is saying, no, it's not a full stop. It's actually supposed to be, that pain is supposed to just be a comma. It's not the end of your life. It's not the end of your life. You see, joy, pain can come through the night, right? Weeping endures for the night, but joy cometh in the morning. So be patient. Morning is coming. So where God has put a semicolon, please don't go and put a full stop. It's not over. If you process it right, what was designed to make you bitter will only make you better. That's all I have for you this night. Amen.